They said the sky split open that night. A storm unlike anything seen in any realm. Lightning tore through the heavens, and thunder echoed across the 9 realms. But this was no ordinary storm. It was a warning, because Thor, son of Odin, had crossed into a world not his own. A world that once trembled beneath the rage of another god, Kratos. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to our channel, to dive deep into battles where myth meets legend, and gods face gods. The story begins long after Ragnarok, when the realms lay in uneasy silence. The All-Father was gone, Asgard rebuilt by Thor's hand. But peace is a fragile thing. Whispers spread of a power growing in another realm, a god who once killed his own pantheon. A ghost wrapped in ash and vengeance. And when Thor heard that name whispered by the Norns themselves, he laughed. "Let him come," Thor said. "I've slain giants. I've slain monsters. No mortal god will shake Asgard again." But pride is the first weapon of the doomed. In another world, deep beyond the edges of Yggdrasil's roots, Kratos lived quietly in the woods beside Atreus, his son. The battles of Olympus were distant memories, the screams of Ares, Zeus, and Athena buried under years of silence. Yet gods never forget, and vengeance has a way of finding those who think they've escaped it. That night the wind changed. A smell of ozone filled the air. The trees whispered warnings. And when Kratos stepped outside his cabin, he felt something he had not felt in decades. The presence of another god. A figure descended from the sky, his hammer crackling with divine fury. Mjolnir struck the earth, splitting stone, shaking the valley. Kratos didn't flinch. He'd faced worse. Thor stood before him, a mountain of muscle and lightning, eyes blazing blue. "So it's true," Thor growled. "The Ghost of Sparta lives." Kratos' expression didn't change. "Leave this place," he said quietly. But Thor laughed. "You think you can tell me where to stand? You killed your own kind. I've come to see what kind of god you really are." The hammer rose. The storm roared. And in that moment the world held its breath. The first strike was not thunder. It was the sound of realms colliding. Kratos caught the hammer mid-swing. The ground beneath them shattered. The sky tore apart as lightning met divine rage. Thor's grin faded. No one had ever stopped Mjolnir like that. Kratos pushed back, eyes burning with something ancient and terrible. He wasn't the god of war anymore, but the ghost of it. "Enough," Kratos warned. But Thor didn't stop. Each strike shook mountains. Each swing of Mjolnir tore the air with fire. The Leviathan axe met the hammer of thunder in a storm of ice and lightning. Every blow carved new scars into the world. Asgardian steel met Spartan frost. Thunder met silence. And when the final strike came, it blasted both gods apart, sending waves of power through the forest. Kratos rose slowly, blood on his hands, chest heaving. Thor staggered, his grin returning. "This is what I've been missing," he said. "A fight worth the gods." And before Kratos could respond, Thor vanished in lightning, leaving only his words behind. "I'll return when the storm calls." Kratos looked at the sky, at the clouds still glowing with electricity. He knew this was only the beginning, and somewhere deep inside, the part of him that once lived for battle stirred again. The thunder god had found him, and this time no realm would remain untouched. Days turned into weeks, but the sky never truly cleared. Lightning haunted the horizon like a warning, echoing the promise Thor had made. Kratos remained silent, but inside, he felt the old fire return. That dark, unending rage that had once driven him to destroy Olympus itself. He tried to bury it, to stay a father, not a warrior. But gods cannot escape who they are. Atreus noticed it first. "The thunder doesn't stop anymore," he said, looking at the storm that hovered beyond the mountains. Kratos didn't answer. He only gripped the Leviathan axe tighter. He knew this was no ordinary storm. This was a challenge. When Thor came again, it wasn't alone. The sky opened, and with him came the Valkyries, once banished warriors, now sworn again to serve the thunder god. Their wings shimmered with lightning, their voices chanting his name. Kratos stood at the edge of the forest, the ground trembling beneath their arrival. "You brought others," he said quietly. Thor smiled through the rain. "I brought witnesses." Then the sky broke. The battle began. The Valkyries dove like storms themselves, each one striking with the speed of thunderbolts. Kratos spun his axe, his movements heavy yet precise, cutting through the chaos with controlled fury. The Leviathan axe met wing, steel, and lightning. Each impact cracked the air. Each kill drew the storm closer. Thor watched from above, his hammer spinning, smiling as he saw the Ghost of Sparta fight like a beast unleashed. "You see," Thor shouted, "you are no different than me. You love it." Kratos hurled his axe upward, catching Thor mid-sentence. The strike sent the thunder god crashing into the mountain behind him. But Thor only laughed, rising again. "Good. Now fight me as the god you are." They met in the middle of the storm. Mjolnir against Leviathan. Fire and frost, rage and thunder. The clash shook realms unseen, echoing across Midgard, Alfheim, and beyond. Kratos fought with silent fury. Thor fought with roaring pride. Two gods defined by power and pain, each refusing to yield. "Why fight me?" Kratos demanded, blocking a crushing blow. "You seek death." Thor spat lightning, grinning through blood. "No. I seek purpose." That word stopped Kratos for a moment. Purpose. The same thing he'd once sought through endless war, through vengeance, through death. It was a mirror, one he did not want to face. But Thor pressed on. "You killed your gods. I drank with mine. But tell me, Ghost, when it's all gone, when your son leaves, when no one remembers your name, what will you be then?" Kratos' silence was thunder in itself. He struck with everything he had. The mountain split, the sky bled fire. But Thor was not mortal. Each blow only made him stronger. Each wound only fed his storm. Finally, Thor caught the Leviathan axe mid-swing and drove Mjolnir into the ground. The resulting blast sent Kratos flying backward, his body slamming through rock and ice. Thor stepped forward slowly, hammer glowing with runes of lightning and blood. He looked down at Kratos, his breath heavy, his voice low. "Do you understand now?" he said. "There's no peace for gods like us. Only storms." Kratos rose, battered but unbroken. He spat blood and whispered, "Then I'll end the storm." He reached behind him and pulled free the blades of chaos. The chains ignited instantly, the air itself trembling. Thor's grin faded. The fire of Hades met the thunder of Asgard, and the world descended into pure fury. The blades roared through the storm, cutting through thunder itself. Kratos moved like a tempest of fire, his rage consuming everything in its path. Thor fought back with divine power, each swing of Mjolnir cracking the heavens. They tore through forests, mountains, and sky, a dance of destruction only gods could perform. When the dust cleared, both stood in silence, surrounded by ruin. Thor, his hammer crackling weakly. Kratos, his chains smoldering in the rain. And then Thor laughed again, a low, broken sound. You are worthy." Lightning struck, and Thor vanished once more. Not defeated, not victorious, but changed. Kratos looked around the ruined land, his breath steady, eyes cold. He knew this wasn't over, because gods like them don't end with mercy. They end with destiny. And destiny was already stirring beyond the realms. A final storm waiting to break. The storms grew louder. Lightning danced endlessly across the sky, as if the realms themselves awaited judgment. But this was no longer Asgard's storm, nor Midgard's silence. This was something new, a storm born of two gods, two destinies, colliding one last time. Far beyond the world tree, where the threads of fate were once woven by the Norns, the air shimmered with power. Reality cracked like glass. And through that tear Thor returned. But not the same. His eyes glowed with stormfire, his body scarred by the chaos of their last battle. Yet his expression was calm, almost human. He no longer sought a fight for pride. This time he came for truth. Kratos stood waiting. No fear, no anger, only resolve. The ashes on his skin glowed faintly in the stormlight, and behind him, the Leviathan axe and the blades of chaos lay buried in the ground. He would not draw them, not yet. Thor approached slowly, hammer lowered. "I've seen what lies beyond the storm," he said. "There is no Valhalla, no Olympus, no end that waits for gods like us." Kratos stared silently. He already knew. Every god he'd ever slain had said the same thing before dying. Immortality without peace. Power without meaning. Thor looked to the sky, watching the thunder split across it like veins of fire. "You and I, we were born to destroy. But maybe," he paused, his voice rough, "maybe destruction is what keeps the realms alive." Kratos' voice was quiet. "You seek purpose in pain. I sought to escape it. Neither path leads to peace." For a moment the storm calmed. Only the sound of wind moved between them. And then, from the torn sky above, a light began to grow, bright, endless, ancient. The world tree itself trembled. A ripple moved through all realms, and the voice of fate whispered through thunder. Two gods, two destinies, one storm to end them all. The ground split, flames erupted, and suddenly they stood not in Midgard but in a space between worlds. The heart of Yggdrasil, where time, power, and memory became one. Thor raised Mjolnir. Kratos picked up his axe. No more words, only the storm. Their clash ignited the void itself. Every strike sent ripples across the branches of creation. Asgard trembled. Olympus screamed from its ruins. The realms saw their gods undone. Mjolnir shattered the ground. The Leviathan froze the air. The blades of chaos cut through lightning like divine fire. Thor's laughter roared through eternity. Kratos' silence burned like a storm held in flesh. They fought not as men, not even as gods. They fought as forces of existence. Thunder met war. Fury met fate. Each blow a question. Each wound an answer. At last, their power tore through the center of the storm. Both gods struck, Mjolnir and the blades meeting at full force. The explosion consumed everything. Light, silence, then nothing. When the dust settled, the sky was clear. The storm was gone, and two figures lay in the quiet aftermath. Thor's hammer rested beside him, its glow fading. Kratos knelt, breathing heavily, the ash on his skin slowly washing away in the rain. Thor looked up at him, weakly smiling. "You've done it," he whispered. "The storm's gone." Kratos shook his head. "No, it simply moved on." Thor chuckled once, then his voice softened. "Tell me, did you ever forgive your gods?" Kratos stared at the sky, his voice a whisper. "No, but I learned to forgive myself." Thor closed his eyes. Lightning flickered once in the distance, then faded forever. Kratos stood alone again, the silence of peace heavy around him. He walked to the edge of the broken plain, and for the first time in centuries, he looked at the horizon not as a warrior, but as a man. In the wind, he heard his son's voice. Atreus, distant but clear. "Father, it's over." Kratos nodded slowly. Perhaps finally it was. The gods of thunder and war had both fallen, not in hatred but in understanding. And as he walked away from the battlefield, the storm clouds parted completely. A single ray of sunlight broke through, falling upon Mjolnir and the Leviathan axe. Two weapons, two legacies, forever silent, because even gods must one day rest.